Hey everyone, Token Dave over here, the dorky token black guy who's just trying to get by. And welcome to another edition of AA, Adaptation Application. Here, I give my thoughts on how well an original or an already established story has been adapted into a new or an updated medium. Well, I gave my review of The Hunt for Red October, so now it's time to give my thoughts on how well Tom Clancy's novel was adapted into the 1990 movie of the same title. Before I go any further, spoiler warning. I am going to spoil things in this AA compared to my review. Assuming if you've already seen my review, you've basically got the gist of the story. However, there are things that I didn't disclose that will be touched upon in this. So watch at your own risk. Please either watch the movie or read the book or both before you watch this AA. But if you don't care, please continue. But you have been warned. Okay, I have a confession to make. I reread this back in November to try to prepare for it, and I was not only rereading it, but I was listening to this on audiobook, and I didn't get enough time to jot down enough notes for this AA, so I'm going off of my memory from the things that I've read from the book, and that's a little difficult, because if any of you guys have ever read an espionage novel, let alone one by Tom Clancy, you know how in-depth and how much detail he goes into things that you can actually lose track of things. But I'm going to do my best, to try to point out some of the differences from the book and the movie that I can remember. First and foremost, let's start off with the fact that Sean Connery's character, Captain Marko Ramius, got top billing in the movie, and it looks as if the movie is following him more. Now, the interesting thing is that in the movie, like I said, it looks like it's following him, and basically in the movie, it's very clear, in the book and the movie, it's very clear that Ramius is planning to defect to the United States. However, they don't really tell you why in the movie, right? They give you a brief synopsis, talking about the death of his wife and basically, the fact that he's Lithuanian. But in the book, they go into a little more detail how he blames the Soviet Union for killing his wife, because there were some things that basically they could have done to prevent it, and they did it. And to top it off, he has memories of his grandfather taking him fishing, and he remembers how his grandfather was forced into serving into the USSR against his own will, but just to be able to make sure that Ramius' father and him would actually have a comfortable life and everything. But, Ramius really detested how the Soviet Union, right, really forced him in a position that he kind of didn't really want, but, he had to work the system, and he felt that his best way to get back at the country that took away so much from his family was to defect. All right? Now, so, and to top it off, he definitely was a lead supporting character in the novel, and then he also becomes a supporting character in the third novel, which chronologically is actually the third. Well, chronology, chronology is the fourth story, but that's going ahead of myself. So, also, I made it clear that Ramius intended to defect, and they made that clear in the movie. I did not state that in the review plot rundown, primarily because, yeah, it's pretty, if you went to watch the movie, you'd find out fairly quickly. Okay, I went on enough about Ramius. Let's go into the real lead character, Jack Ryan, Alec Baldwin. Now, the funny thing is, he does come off as a supporting character in this movie, you know, but if you really paid very close attention and without knowing anything about the Tom Clancy novels, you could see that basically Jack Ryan was the main character in this. Primarily because he is the one that actually deduces something that no one else really knows about, and he is practically going on a whim, and to top it off, you know, he gets things about him explained throughout the movie. So it's not like a huge exposition dump on the character right away. It gives you time to actually see him and actually watch him grow. One thing about this movie that they adapt very well, actually, quite frankly, Hunt for Red October is the best adaptation of Jack Ryan himself, flat out, you know, but you really get to see how he's more of the analyst, how he's like, you know, more of a thinker, and to top it off, you see that he finds himself in over his head a lot of times in this movie, which is a frequent occurrence of Jack Ryan in the novels. The fact of the matter is, it's just the fact that he's in over his head, but he always figures a way out of things, you know. And that's one of the reasons why Admiral James Greer actually keeps him around, because he is basically very independent, fast thinking, and to top it off, is able to actually sit there and listen to both sides and come to rational, calculated, logical conclusions. Speaking of James Greer, you know, this is one of the first movies that I actually watched that actually had a racial change, because in the novels, James Greer is Caucasian, but for The Hunt for Red October, he is portrayed by James Earl Jones, whom is black, which is something kind of interesting, you know. They kind of made James Earl Jones, James Greer in Hunt for Red October, a bit of a parallel of Colin Powell, who was a general during the Iraq War in the 1990s, which is fairly interesting and, like, you know, really displaying foresight. Now, another major thing that happened in the book that you don't see in this movie is that there's a lot of activities and references to the British Naval Army. The British Navy. The British Royal Navy actually helped out a hell of a lot more in the novel, and they're not even mentioned really in this book. In the movie, which I can understand, because this was actually the first book they were adapting, and even though the other two movies, Patriot Games and Cardinal of the Kremlin, came out were already out, they weren't sure of how far this movie was going to go, or if they were going to build a franchise of it, which I understood. But there were also some other major things that occurred in the novel that you don't see in this movie. For example, there is a submarine crash that killed some Soviet sailors, and one of them helicopter crash. It was a helicopter crash. And the Russian soldiers were taken to a medical facility in the United States, and basically the doctor that was treating the Russian, there was a bit of tension between some of the Russian Secret Service people and the doctor. Something that wasn't displayed in this movie, but it's a nitpick. By the way, speaking about a little bit of a nitpick, something that could be seen as a nitpick, but I personally think it's worth mentioning, Sam Neill's character, Petrolin. I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but in the novel, he was the second in command, and he really didn't have much of a prominent role in the novel. But in the movie, he does, and Sam Neill nails it. Sam Neill took this character farther beyond what he was in the novel, and they killed him off in the movie, but in the novel, he's one of the people that actually live. Actually, the only person that gets killed is the navigator, which, by the way, there's a KGB spy on the Red October to monitor Ramius' activities, thus how you see that the Red October gets sabotaged. Also, in the ending of the movie, basically, after the mission is a success, at the end of the movie, they take the Red October to Virginia, but you see them taking it to Maine, both hearkening to Jack Ryan's childhood and the state where Admiral James Greer is. So that's kind of interesting. Oh, there's one other thing I forgot. There's a character in this movie named Skip Tyler, and Skip Tyler had a really important role in the novel, but in the movie, he's only there for like maybe 2 scenes, which is a bit of a shame. And unfortunately, I don't remember this character doing that much later on in the Tom Ryan universe, which I always thought Skip was an interesting character, you know. And, at this time period, Ronald Reagan was the president, and his presence was heavily, he was actually in the novel a hell of a lot more. But in this adaptation, they have someone named Mr. Pelt, who is the national security advisor, be on point majority of the time. And to top it off, the Russians made it look as if they were trying to get the Americans to help them sink the Red October, but that didn't actually happen. So that's my adaptation, and that's my adaptation application. Not as organized as I wanted it to be, but there's just so much there that I kind of forgot that I just needed to build everything out. So I'm just going to say this. They adopted the story fairly well. The characters, you know, most of them were better representations. Some characters got the shaft, unfortunately, but the characters that got the shaft it was hit and miss with that. So, and to top it off, some of the extra nuances in the novel was very detail-oriented, and it could be kind of jarring to read, and there's way too much information. So, the way that they trimmed everything down and focused on things, they did a fairly good job. So, all in all, you know, this adaptation application, you know, it did its thing. You know, it could have been a hell of a lot worse with everything that's in the novel, but, you know, I still feel that basically this adaptation was pretty damn good, actually, and was very close to saying it's on point. But, you know, do you guys agree? Do you guys disagree? Drop me a comment below. Give me a like. Follow me on Facebook at Token Dave or on Twitter at TokenDave80. Subscribe, ring that bell so you know when a new video loads, and spread this video out. But until then, this has been Token Dave, the dorky token black guy who's just trying to get by, and I'll catch you guys later.